A woman invited some people over for dinner. At the table, she turned to her 6-year-old daughter and said, "Would you like to say the blessing?" The girl replied, "I wouldn't know what to say." The mother answered, "Just say what you heard your mommy say." The daughter bowed her head and said, "Lord, why on earth did I invite all these people to dinner?" The children were lined up in the cafeteria of a Catholic elementary school for lunch. At the head of the table was a large pile of apples. The nun made a note and posted on the apple tray, "Take only one, God is watching." Moving further along the lunch line, at the other end of the table was a large pile of chocolate chip cookies. A child had written a note, "Take all you want, God is watching the apples." Recently, it has seemed that God has not been hearing our prayers nor watching what has been happening. As you know, of course, 5 years ago, a major natural disaster ravaged Houston. 2.5 years ago, a pandemic began to ravage our world. In addition, we've experienced a dramatic rise in anti-Semitism, numerous mass shootings, political unrest, and a major land war in Europe. I don't have to remind you just how challenging the last few years have been. We've been in a constant state of shell shock. Events keep coming, one after another, continuing to disrupt the ordered rhythm of what we knew before. I am a rabbi. I cannot speak to the political or environmental issues that these past few years have exposed. But I can speak to a question some have been asking me. Where has God been? I mean, we experienced a modern-day plague. We have been like Job, who, in a world of too much human suffering, ends up questioning and challenging God. He protests to the God whom he wants to believe, Lama fanecha tastir. Why do you hide your face? Here's the beauty of being Jewish. We had thousands of years of tradition to comb through to find answers. Responses from people who also struggled to find God in difficult times. Fellow Jews who gave honest answers. And I know we could all use some honesty right now. I want to share a story told in the Talmud. Thousands of years ago, hundreds of the greatest rabbinic sages had set out for an outdoor walk. The greatest of rabbis, the all-star team. And as they're enjoying a beautiful afternoon, they notice at the edge of a garden, down a long slope, a father and a boy circled about the foot of a lone tall tree. Seeing a bird's nest at the top of the tree, the father tells his son, he asks his son, "Can you go get the eggs?" Reminding him while doing it to shoo away the mother bird, to follow the mitzvah of keeping the mother bird from experiencing the grief of losing her eggs. The boy diligently agrees, takes a ladder, and begins to climb the tree. Here's the amazing part. There are only 3 commandments that the Torah guarantees long life if fulfilled. One is honoring one's parents. One of the other 2, it's not keeping Shabbat or keeping kosher or giving to Rabbi Strauss's discretionary fund. Surprisingly, one of the other 2, it's when you send away a mother bird before taking her eggs. This boy is planning on fulfilling 2 commandments at the exact same time that promise the reward of a lengthy life. This young man is guaranteed to have a fruitful life. The rabbis are in awe. This kid is set. A few minutes later, a terrible cry shatters everything. In the process of climbing the ladder and shooing away the mother bird, the boy loses his balance and falls to his death. Instantly, the rabbis rush headlong down the grassy slope. They reach the father already on his knees, gathering his dead son into his arms. An obedient son, following 2 commandments in the Torah that explicitly promise an extra long life. And yet he has fallen to his death. Why would the rabbis even include this story in our Talmud? It's basically calling out what's written in the Torah. You would think they would have said to each other, guys, let's not tell anyone what happened. We'll just keep this one to ourselves. God forbid one day some rabbi uses it in his Kol Nidre sermon. What were the rabbis trying to teach us by keeping this story in? Let's look to their answers. First, the rabbis offer a few answers. One rabbi says, I got it. We've been reading the Torah incorrectly all these years. It's not a guaranteed lengthy life in this world. No, the Torah means that one is guaranteed a long and eternal life in the world to come, in heaven. A clever answer. None of his colleagues will ever know if he's right. But in reality, not a good answer. The Torah is very clear. The reward is a long life in this world. There's a second explanation that is more honest. The Talmud tells us that the boy died because he made the mistake of climbing the tree using a rickety and unstable ladder. That's the end of the debate. That's all the Talmud says. The boy used a rickety and unstable ladder. From that, we can deduce that the boy's death was likely. From that answer, we can learn what the rabbis are telling us. When we don't take all necessary precautions, they're reminding us that we cannot rely on God's saving grace. It did not matter that the son was following 2 commandments that promised a long life. No matter how many commandments we fulfill, God created a world where nature still runs its course. As much as we would like it, God does not always intervene. The rabbis are teaching us their concept of olam keminhago noheg. God allows the world to proceed along its natural course. It's not always fair, but that's how the world works. For example, the rabbis also ask, in a simple terms, suppose a man stole a bag of seeds and planted them in his garden. It would be right if the seeds did not grow. They're stolen seeds. But nature follows its own rules and is indifferent to what is right and what is wrong. The seeds will germinate. The seeds will grow. God created our world and then set it in motion. And no matter how careful we are, no matter how good we are, no matter how hard we try not to make mistakes, sometimes things simply go wrong, even if we are undeserving. We cannot assume a miracle will occur even when we are doing the right thing. Too often, there is randomness in this universe that by choice, God does not always stop nature from taking its sometimes cruel and deadly course. Rabbi Harold Kushner, the author of the classical inspirational work, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, once said to me on a trip here to Houston, he said, Brian, expecting the world to treat you fairly because you are a good person is like expecting a bull not to charge you when you're awaiting a red cape, but you're a vegetarian. From a purely moral standpoint, the bull should know better. You're a vegetarian. But of course, the bull does not know better. No matter how good we are, our world is not often based on fairness. Life has clearly not been fair over the last several years. A major hurricane flooded our city. Nature ran its course. A pandemic started in China and spread across the world. Nature ran its course. A Russian tyrant wages war against innocent people. Nature is running its course. Now you may be asking, Rabbi, if what you were saying is all true, if this is what the rabbis of our tradition held, what's the point? The point of coming to shul. The point of being here on the holiest night of the Jewish year. Why do all this Jewish stuff? There has to be more. Of course there is. After graduating college, I started Reform Rabbinical School. I got to Israel, and as great as the school was, I soon realized that the Reform Rabbinical School was not for me. To top it off, I had a falling out with my 2 roommates, and then a bad relationship breakup with a fellow classmate. At that time, I was left with very few friends. And I quickly found myself pretty much alone and unsure of my desire to even become a rabbi. It was a difficult time in my young life. And walking the streets of Jerusalem by myself through a difficult and cold winter, I was alone, except for my prayer book, this Siddur. And for the first time, I was learning how to pray. But not just the text of the words. I was being straightforward with God for the first time in my life, asking God the hard questions and getting back honest answers. I was really praying to God with my own thoughts and my own personal fears. I was actually learning how to pray. It turned out I made it through that year happier than I ever been, surrounded by new and close friends, more sure than ever of my career choice. Looking back, it wasn't God who made people like me or reinforced my career choice. It was my prayers to God that changed me for the better. It was God who got me through that difficult time. Sometimes I am asked, Rabbi, where are the miracles? Where are the things I ask God for? Rabbi, what's the point if our tradition often teaches that nature runs its course anyway? I learned the answer back in that cold winter in Jerusalem. God never promised us that life would be fair. It says it nowhere in our tradition. Not in the Torah, the Talmud, nowhere. But it does say, and God does promise, that when we have to confront the unfairness, God would be there to help us. God would be at our side. None of us, no one, has to be alone. The act of tefillah, the act of prayer can give us confidence. It can give us encouragement. Prayer can lighten the heavy loads we all carry. Yes, the sacred act of searching for God can give us hope when we need it the most. As I've now discovered many times in my life, prayer can help us find God. Because despite the great challenge of the last several years, I believe God is still there for all of us. Maybe you too have also been searching for God. During one particularly frightening part of the pandemic, Google searches for prayer surged to the highest level ever recorded. Billions were looking how to pray, many for the first time. Yes, we often don't blame God for our troubles. Rather, we try to find God in times of trouble. In times of crisis, we humans, we Jews, have a tendency to turn to religion for comfort, for explanation. These last few years are no exception. Yet I know finding God is not easy. Having faith in difficult times can be hard. And part of me wishes I could immediately make it so it was easy for all of us. If I could just cure people with my hands, or use my powers to lift someone up out of their seats, or if I could use my powers to make the Texans win a Super Bowl. That's actually beyond a miracle. I'm not even sure God could orchestrate it. How about if they win back-to-back games? That would demonstrate my powers. And this place would be packed every day of the year. But I am clearly not a miracle worker. I am a rabbi. And my job, my honor, my role is to teach about our tradition. Then the hard work is up to you. That's Judaism. As Rabbi Heschel taught us years ago, Judaism does not ask its followers to take a leap of faith. It asks them to take a leap of action. My colleagues and I can provide the tools. Our wonderful new cantor can provide the inspiration. But ultimately, it's up to you to do the hard work, to work on your own individual relationship with our Creator. Is there any better time to do so? I want you to know this year, through more sermons and programs and some great visiting scholars, we as a congregation will explore these topics, the topics of God, the topics of faith, the topics of prayer. And I hope all of you will join us. Because I think deep down, we all believe what the great Yiddish writer Isaac Bashevis Singer once said. He said, there is a plan to the universe. There is a high intelligence, maybe even a purpose, but it's given to us on the installment plan. I would say that a person is not born to know God, but to search for God. The search in itself is a way of serving God. My friends, let us search together. Tonight, on this holy night, thank God it's the most normal life has seemed in a very long time. Our sanctuary, our Barg sanctuary, our spiritual home, crowded with fellow Jews on such an important night. This is the first full Kol Nidre in 3 years. It's one of the most beautiful pictures I've seen in a very long time. And Judaism teaches us that the presence of God, the Shekhinah, is most clearly present when a large group of Jews is gathered together for prayer. I sense God is with us tonight. Yes, out of the madness of the recent past, we are blessed to have found each other again. Now, can we all find God? Because God is still there, wanting to help us all.